There's a feeling that's difficult to explain to someone who hasn't experienced it. You're in the room. You're part of the conversation. People know your name, laugh at your jokes, include you in their plans. And still, somewhere underneath all of that, there is a quiet and persistent sense that you don't quite fit. That you are slightly adjacent to the life happening around you rather than inside it. Most people assume this feeling is shyness, or social anxiety, or something that therapy will eventually fix. But psychology tells a more complicated and more interesting story about what's actually happening beneath that sense of not belonging. Because for some people, this feeling isn't a symptom, it's a signal. Psychologist Roy Baumeister identified belonging as one of the most fundamental human needs. Not a preference, a need. The same category as food and safety. And when that need goes chronically unmet, not because of rejection, but because of a deeper mismatch between who you are and the environments you've moved through, something quietly shifts inside a person. You stop expecting to be fully understood. You become fluent in a kind of social performance that looks like connection from the outside but feels hollow from within. The first thing that happens is that you become a very good observer. When you've never fully felt inside something, you develop the habit of watching from the edge. You notice dynamics others are too embedded to see. You read rooms accurately because you've never had the luxury of taking them for granted. This isn't a consolation prize. Research on people who experience chronic outsider status consistently shows heightened perceptual sensitivity, a sharpened ability to detect social nuance that insiders simply don't develop because they never needed to. The second thing is that you carry a grief most people don't recognize as grief. It's not the grief of losing something, it's the grief of never quite having it, of watching other people move through the world with an ease that has always felt just slightly out of reach for you. That grief is real, and it matters. But psychology also asks an important question about it. Is the belonging you've been aching for something you lost, or something that was never available in the environments you happen to be placed in? Third, people who never feel like they belong often have a far more developed inner life than those who do. When the external world doesn't fully hold you, you build something interior that does. A rich private landscape of thought, meaning, and understanding that most people never need to construct because the social world meets enough of their needs. That interior life is not a substitute. It is its own kind of wealth. Here's what psychology wants you to understand. The research on belonging makes a crucial distinction between belonging and fitting in. Fitting in requires adjustment. It asks you to sand down the parts of yourself that don't conform. Belonging, as researcher Brené describes it, is something categorically different. It requires you to be fully yourself and still be received. And for people whose inner world runs deeper, whose questions run stranger, whose needs run more specific than average, genuine belonging is simply rarer to find. That is not failure. That is a narrower match. Fourth, the sense of not belonging is often most acute among people who can belong almost anywhere but fully nowhere. You can enter a room and within minutes find a way to connect, to contribute, to be liked. But liking is not the same as being known, and you have always felt the difference acutely. That gap between being accepted and being truly seen is where the loneliness actually lives. Fifth, and this is the part most people never reach, the feeling of not belonging sometimes has nothing to do with finding the right group. It has to do with finding the right relationship with yourself. Psychologists who study identity consistently find that people who carry this feeling the longest are often people who have spent so much time trying to locate belonging outside themselves that they've never fully settled into who they actually are. And a person who hasn't settled into themselves is always going to feel slightly foreign everywhere they go. Here's what's worth holding on to. The people who have never felt like they belong are often the people who eventually build something new. A community that didn't exist before. A conversation that had no room until they made one. A life shaped entirely by inner compass rather than external approval. You were never failing to belong. You were always looking for something more specific than most people ever think to want.